A man is writing to himself at night time, sitting in a tent on the Danube frontier. It is freezing cold, there is a plague among the camp, and he is fighting in a war that he did not want against people that he does not hate, and he will do this on and off for the rest of his life. This man is also the Emperor of Rome. He is also regarded as the most powerful man who has ever lived and will ever live, in the sense that no one before or ever after him has held that much of the known world in one pair of hands and one brain. That man was not writing for us. He continues to write because he continues to forget. His passage is short. This passage, in a general sense, is a short passage out of the whole book. It is book 4 and section 3 in Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He notices that people are always looking for somewhere to go, for some place to disappear to. Maybe the countryside, maybe the shore, maybe the mountains, or just somewhere quieter, somewhere where the noise in their mind stops, somewhere the entire self, the body and the soul, can be set down for a while and sat in isolation. And he's a little contemptuous about it as well, which in my opinion is worth trying to analyze or sitting with, because he calls this the mark of the common sort of men. Not because there is anything wrong with the mountains in any sense, but instead because the impulse to leave is wrong. You go to the shore and you take yourself with you. The disturbance is not in the city. The disturbance travels along wherever you go. It is packed in the bag before you leave. So he offers a different retreat to you, inward, in the mind. He offers that you retreat into the soul and into the brain instead of retreating to a different location. And that inward retreat, that intrusive, division is always available for you. And it also costs you absolutely nothing, and also requires no travel, no season, no leave from work, no sick leave, etc. Right? It costs nothing material. It takes nothing physical away from you. At any moment, anyone can go there, he says. Most people will stop reading that passage at that exact moment. That is, the quotable part of the entire segment. That is the part which looks good on Instagram, looks good on a bio, or looks good in a YouTube video. That is the part which gets put on a photograph at the top of a mountain, right? But Aurelius attaches a condition immediately after, and in my opinion, the condition is the whole thing, if not more. The inner retreat only works if there is something to retreat to. Marcus Aurelius was not describing a technique in this moment. He was instead describing a place that has to have been furnished. You go inwards and you find whatever you have been putting there. It's the thoughts that you have actually thought. It is the feelings or the things that you have actually felt, the books you've actually read and turned over, and whatever principles that you have genuinely tested and existed through, rather than merely agreed with or resonated with from an Instagram page. If you have been filling the interior with nothing, then the retreat itself remains nothing. The quiet room remains empty with nothing to fill the sound. And may you arrive, regardless of the fact that you are there, there is no one else. There is no one else to greet you. There is no interior. There's just nothing. It's an empty room. Imagine just walking into an empty warehouse. What are you going to do? Retreating to that place. And in my opinion, that means that this passage is not necessarily about the withdrawal at all. It may be in some little sense, right? You can obviously find the little sense it makes sense in. But instead, I think it's about a question. It's a question of what you have been doing inside your own head, what you have been doing to furnish the inside of your mind while you were not paying any attention to it at all. The subconscious effort to make the inside of your mind glamorous, to make it somewhere you want to retreat to, what you've been feeding it, and what it now actively is made of. Marcus Aurelius is writing this at the end of a day of war, an end of a day of fighting and killing and removing other people from the planet, murdering other people, which again wasn't a choice necessarily. Obviously everything you can say ultimately is a choice, but to most soldiers, they do not have the choice and instead fight to live. So after this day of war-torn misery, he retreats into the only room available to him. And it's not the tent that he sleeps in, but instead the mind, like we've been talking about. And what Aurelius finds when he goes inside is a set of arguments he has spent his entire life building, which is specifically why it works for him, why it works for Aurelius. Not because he has some method, not because he has some process or any ulterior motive to get out of this mind searching, but instead just because he has set his environment up for him to understand. So where the passage stops being so comfortable, in my opinion, is when Aurelius understands, or at least assumes, that the mind is somewhere you can go for quiet. Because for a lot of people, it is the loudest place they know. It is one of the most anxiety-ridden, uncomfortable rooms that they ever inhabit. It is not the refuge from the disturbance, but instead the source of it to a lot of people. And for instance, if you tell someone whose head does not stop making noise that their salvation is inwards and found in their soul and mind, then you're literally giving them directions to the fire. You're giving them directions to jump off of a cliff, because to them that is the source of the issue, not the solve of it. Aurelius, in my opinion, doesn't seem to necessarily consider this at all throughout any of his passages or any of his books. Perhaps it wasn't his experience. Perhaps that's exactly why, right? Because Meditations was not a book written for publication, but instead a book written for his mind only. Maybe that's why he didn't consider it. But maybe because he had, by then, done enough of the furnishing that going into him was not frightening, right? He, in his experience, he had such a well-furnished mind, such a understandable mind, that to him it was incomprehensible that the mind could be somewhere that was not for salvation. But moving past, I think there's also a second thing in this entire video, this segment, which I myself don't know how to settle, and I'd like someone's help on it, right? If Aurelius had every single external retreat that ever existed, he had the estates, he had the coastlines, he had the entire empire of Rome, and he also had the leisure to move through it at any demand, and he was the one man alive who could test the claim that no location will save you because he has access to every location, does that make him uniquely qualified to tell us that the shore itself is not the answer, having gone to the shore, having gone to the mountains, having gone to anything, any place he wants, and found himself standing there? Or does it make him the last person who should be saying it? Does it make him the most unqualified person to be saying something along those lines, saying it to people who have never been able to leave at all, never had the chance, have been working every single day? I don't think that his passage, or any passage as a matter of fact, answers this. I do not think Marcus Aurelius knew that he was being asked this question at any point of his life. Because like I said, his book was written in retrospection. It was written for him. It was written as a description of his mind and soul put onto paper. Not for publication, not for clickbait, not for views and not for reads and to make money off of it, right? This book, Meditations, has been strip mined for over a decade. It has been turned into a discipline and stoicism and optimization and make money and business blah 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 book, into a way of getting more out of a morning instead of more out of a long life, or understanding that the life is not long but the person who inhibits it, right? The reading is available to everyone, and it's not entirely wrong, but it is very, very small. That is a very small part of it, right? This productivity bullshit. As well as this passage that I've been talking about this entire video, it's a pretty small segment out of the whole book. Like I said, it specifically comes from book 4, segment 3. However, it's only mentioned here and there throughout the rest of it. Because I think Aurelius is not handing you a technique for productivity, but instead asking you a much worse question that you now must sit with. Is there anything inside that you feel is worth being alone with? Because eventually you will go in there. There is not necessarily a choice in that matter. Eventually you will have to do some sort of retrospection, some sort of understanding of one's own mind. Some nights when the distractions fall, when there's nothing left to scroll or to open, or when the room is finally settled in darkness and the noise has stopped and there is only the interior of the mind and whatever you have put inside of it. What is actually in there? When did you last check that? This entire passage is up on my website, Aporia, which you can find at aporiaweekly.vercel.app. It'll be in the description. And it's full of questions and analysis that I could not fit into this short video. I think Aurelius wrote this to himself, not to us, and that is, in my opinion, what makes it worth reading slowly. So if you're interested in a more deep passage analysis, or even just sharing your opinions to the general public, we have a community notice board, or just getting it emailed to you once a week. Everything is available at Aporia, and that's all I have to say, so check it out in my description.